So I'm recording right now.
Okay.
So I believe I should be able to just edit it a little
Sure.
bit.
So you do video with the podcast. It's not just audio.
Yeah.
Okay.
I try to do video. With Riverside, it's a lot easier just because it's like a Zoom setup.
Yeah.
When we do it like this, it it takes a little bit more effort to kind of get it edited and recorded and dropped into the different platforms. But I prefer to do video, especially with the sign, because
Sure.
it's like so when I first got Elevant, my first thing I wanted to buy was this sign because I was like, oh, I'm gonna have a podcast studio, and it's like to this day I still don't have one. But we'll jump into it here. Welcome everyone to the Rise and Go podcast. I am your host, Michael Davis. I'm super excited to have our next guest here. Before we jump into the program here, I want to share with everyone where you can find our social media sites. So on Instagram, we are Elevant MPLS. You can find this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and usually just about any platform you can look for. Facebook, you can find us at Elevant. On TikTok, we're Elevant5. But again, we're super excited to have our next guest. And as we get into this podcast, this is going to be a great opportunity for everyone to like and subscribe and follow us on all of our platforms. So to all of our listeners, thank you again for tuning in. And without further ado, we'll have our guest introduce himself.
Thanks, Mike. My name is Quentin Super. I'm an author, a writer, entrepreneur. I tell the story of a business owner in 5 to 7 minutes.
Great. So for our listeners, where can they find you on social media?
Good question. So on Facebook, Quentin Super, Quentin. On Instagram, Quentin V Super, and then LinkedIn, Quentin Super.
Nice. It's so interesting because like with the different social media handles, you want to have like one handle for everything. But I think we experienced the same thing. Is like it's not as easy as it looks to get everything organized. But it's so interesting. I've known Quentin for a few years here. Were you a personal trainer at Lifetime at one point in time?
I was not. No.
Okay.
I just go to Lifetime a lot.
Sure. I wasn't sure because we've played hoops together for quite a bit, and I think this is a good transition. So tell our listeners a little bit more about your background.
Sure. And where would you like me to start?
Very beginning.
Okay.
Kind of take it wherever you want.
So the Minnesota audience will appreciate this. Grew up in Osseo, Minnesota. Went to high school there. And then after high school, went to St. Cloud State. Spent 7 years there. Like, did get 2 degrees. So, I wasn't like a super senior. But then, I guess I'll try to make it as brief as possible. After college, I ended up going to China for a year, doing a bunch of other traveling, just probably trying to find myself, aka like be a degenerate and go do a bunch of stupid stuff. And then, pandemic hits. It's like probably the perfect time for me because time to slow down, time to be a little bit more serious about life. And that's when I got into things like sales and got more serious about my writing in terms of actually helping people, not just writing, let's say, about my life.
Sure. Were you an athlete in college?
I played rec sports, like intramurals, but no, I wasn't on any of the teams or anything like that.
I've been wondering that since I've known you because you're a great hooper and you got the height for it. So it's a little surprising that you weren't a college athlete. But is there a reason why you didn't pursue that?
I wouldn't say I didn't pursue it. It just never happened. Like in high school, I played basketball my freshman and sophomore year, got into some trouble. That, in combination with just not being that spectacular, led to me not playing those last 2 years of high school, and so it never made sense for me to go play, Division II basketball or anything like that. I did actually have the opportunity to go play JUCO basketball, and just didn't take it. Like I listened to my dad, who was like, "Don't do it." In hindsight, probably a good decision, but like the young, ignorant me was like, "No, I want to go do that because they're gonna get me on a weightlifting program. I'm not gonna be another member of the Holocaust, and I'm going to have like my basketball dreams become fulfilled." That didn't happen, nor would have ever happened. Like I'm a 6'5" skinny white dude. There's no real ceiling for guys like me, you know? So everything works out for a reason.
I couldn't agree more. It's interesting because we met earlier this week for an article that you're doing on Elevant, and sharing my story of I went the JUCO route, and it was something that's so interesting because again, like I was not a spectacular student. I kind of share some similarities where I didn't prioritize what were going to be probably the right things for me. And in that story, you heard a little bit more about my JUCO experience. I got into a little trouble, got kicked off the team, and again, if I were to look back on that and do things a different way, obviously I wouldn't have gotten kicked off the team. But the junior college experience is an interesting one
Yeah,
because
what's it like?
it's you really have to find out whether or not you love playing your sport. And it's the 5 a.m. wake ups, 3 days a week, doing the weightlifting, doing the conditioning, all the things that go into being an athlete, including like going to classes and succeeding in that area as well. It's a lot of people like in high school, it's like, yeah, you practice a little bit, but it's not year round.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go into a college athletics program, it's year round, and it's 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. You're doing something every piece of the day. And luckily for me, I feel like baseball was my pride and joy. It's the thing that I love doing the most. And
Mm-hmm.
I realized that I can't actually play in in the spring season unless I honor my commitments. And so, really kind of just being hard headed and making sure that, hey, the only way I can play is if I go to class and I do all the right things. And luckily, baseball was such a big passion of mine. I kind of worked my way through all of the challenges that I faced. But
Sure.
that's something that I tell my McAllister guys is like, hey guys, like if you want this, you have to commit to every piece of it because you're going to be busy every minute of every day. And at the end of the day, it's a great challenge, but at the same time, I think it's really rewarding when you can really see your way through. You say you went to school for 7 years, I went to school for 5, and to ultimately get the degree at the end, it's like baseball was a huge catalyst for that for me because
Mm-hmm.
without baseball, I would have never gotten it. But
Sure.
no, that's so interesting. And so, share what your degree program was.
Undergrad was in film studies, which is a very valuable piece of paper.
Yeah,
Being facetious, and then I do have a master's degree in English,
right.
so more applicable skills to the real world, but not something you're bringing to Medtronic or a major company being like, "Hey, give me a job."
Yeah.
But you do get those soft skills, and so it was of value.
Yeah, it's in my recruiting experience. I look at where people go to school. I look at their degree programs, and to me, it's all about like committing to that program and actually finishing it. It's not about like necessarily what your degree is in. Now, for some roles that I recruit for, if you're a software engineer, you got to have a comp sci major. But
Right.
if you're getting into sales, if you have business or if you are like an accounting, like it doesn't necessarily matter. It's funny that you
Art
say, like,
history.
yeah, exactly. I got my degree up there, and my degree is in health and human performance or kinesiology.
Yeah.
And typically someone will go like the personal trainer route or get into different aspects of like sports training, things like of that nature. And never once needed my degree for anything that I've ever done. But it's interesting. Our CEO at our company said something that has kind of always stuck with me. It's like it's not about what your degree is. It's about committing and really working your way to finish something, and that shows a level of dedication to something that you will see things through.
Mm-hmm.
And even like the more elevated your degree program is, whether you get a master's, PhD, again, that really shows a high level of commitment to what you're doing. And this is where I want to jump into a little bit more about your being an author. Kind of tell us more about why that's one of your passions.
It's fun. I don't even know if it's a passion anymore. Like
Okay.
I just do it because like I enjoy it. Passion, it's hard. I don't really make a whole lot of money actually writing and publishing books. Like in fact, I probably lose money on that. But indirectly, you end up making money because the opportunities that it provides you, sort of thing. But I just love to write. Like we did our interview. I'm writing your story. Like I thoroughly enjoyed the several hours I got to spend at typing that up. You know what I mean? So authoring, journaling, the journalistic pursuits, I genuinely enjoy it. I'm more passionate about the journalism, the authorship. It's like, again, like it's like if you have a dating profile. Like I'm single. I know
Yeah.
you're not, but it's like I refuse to put that on my dating profile because people are gonna be like, women are gonna say, oh, like this guy's broke as fuck or
Right.
whatever. And it's like I do not want to deal with that. So yeah, I wrote 3 books, and in hindsight, I don't necessarily know why, but like I love doing it. If I'm being honest, but in the moment, I'm kind of like, what was the point of that?
Sure.
In so many ways.
Where did you like where does the passion come from? Was it something that you did as a young man, or like was it something that you kind of developed over time? Tell me a little bit more about that.
It's a very good question. I had read the newspaper, the Star Tribune, the sports section specifically, every day when I was a kid growing up, like religiously. Like if I missed it, actually, I don't even think I literally ever missed a date because if I
Sure.
did, like I'd be in a bad mood and make my parents' life hell and things like that. And then I think junior year of high school, I got on this chat room for like our fantasy football league and would just write the most egregious things about like my buddies' moms or whatever. Obviously in good fun, but it was
Sure.
like I had developed this vocabulary that probably trumped that of my friends simply because I read so much more than them. And then honestly, going into college, like I didn't really know how to write. I was just pandering to the teachers, things like that. But eventually, like I started to build some confidence, particularly in that film studies program. They're like, "Yo, just write whatever you want. Like I'm not holding you to a quote unquote standard." That was really liberating, and I just applied that throughout the rest of my life to this point where it's like no one's really telling me what to write. I just go and I write it, and it feels good, and like I'm bringing value to you in this case, to the other
Yeah.
people I interview, and that's rewarding. That's fulfilling.
That's awesome. And I've looked into like your social media, and I've looked at several stories that you've written, and to me, I think you're doing such a valuable thing for people. Showing that what they're doing, people recognize that,
Mm-hmm.
and people are interested in their story behind that. So, can you tell us a few of like your favorite stories that you've done on some folks here recently?
Recently, that's a good question. There's this like popular social media influencer. His name is Anton Daniels. He has like 500,000 subs on YouTube. He talks a lot about like black culture and some of the issues that go on in the black community. I got a chance to talk to him. That was very interesting. That was very rewarding. A lot of the guys, it's like there's Mike Floyd, who I'm sure you know from
Yep.
Lifetime Fitness. Interviewed him a couple of years ago, excuse me, to talk about his football career, and then this year we talked about like his real estate career and like people with a little bit of like clout who like are public figures in many ways, they're fun to interview because
Yeah.
it's like you see them and then when I write, basically writing my interpretation of them. But everyone's enjoyable to write about. It doesn't matter if you're a plumber, the CEO of a plumbing company, or Mike Floyd or whomever. It's like I'm telling that person's story, but it's like how I interpret that person. It's just like this unique thing that you can only accomplish with writing. Like we're doing a podcast, you can't really interpret
Right.
me, right? Like we're just having a conversation. So that's maybe the fun of writing is the artistic freedom you get.
For sure. And it's so interesting that, Michael Floyd's a great example of someone who, has lived a very unique life, being a football player,
Mm-hmm.
going to Notre Dame, playing professionally, winning a Super Bowl. And then, he's going through a big transition as he goes into the real estate aspect. From what I've seen, he seems to be doing very well. He's very successful.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, telling that story where, again, probably the majority of his life, people have always focused on him as a football player, but going behind the scenes and learning more about him as an individual and how he's transitioning, I mean, that's got to mean a lot to him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm guessing, as a football player, people are always like, oh, it's Michael Floyd. I want to get his autograph. But, to really, dive a little bit deeper and, be really interested in who he is as a person, those are the types of things that we discuss as well. That, it means a lot to me that you're writing an article, you're recognizing the work that I've put in. And I want to chat a little bit more about how you're influencing people. This is something
Sure.
that
And can I interject real quick?
oh, of
So
course.
I've written the article, I've sent it to you, you're happy with it. Like
Yeah.
what was that experience like? You receiving the article, reading it, how did it make you feel?
That's a great question. To thinking like back on reading through it, I was just excited that you did it so quickly. To be honest with you, a lot of things as like an entrepreneur that I'm starting to recognize is not everyone's kind of on the same timeline as you. For me, like I like to do things urgently. I'd rather things get done than be perfect. And when I read the article, I mean, there was a couple of things in the article where it's like, it could be changed a little bit, like and
That's fair.
and like honestly, like it was like you said, I was like the conference MVP, and I was like, well, I was the All American. My roommate was the MVP, so if he sees that, he's gonna give me shit. But I'm like, at the end of the day, I mean, that is your interpretation. I thought you did a great job telling the story, and you really got the points of like what I was trying to emphasize a little bit more about my background, things that motivate me, things that I have struggled with, the challenges that I've overcome. And that's the story of Elevant. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what you're truly doing. And that's the thing that I was so excited about because that's what I told you. I loved it because, again, I don't want Elevant to focus on me solely, but I want people to recognize, the things that I have been through and why Elevant is so important to me and why I want to share the message of Rise and go to other people because I've been through the fucking ringer in my life and things have really challenged me and I've made every mistake in the book. And, the way you wrote the article, I think it really shows, how much I care about this brand and what I want to do for people. So to answer your question again, I absolutely loved it. And I thought you did a great job telling that story. And that's again, I think why I was so excited when you reached out to me because I've seen what you've written and the videos you've done of other people, and it's like what you're doing, I think is truly amazing. And I wish there was more people in this world that were doing the things that we're doing in trying to help people and trying to share people's stories, because I think it's so important in this day and age. It's so funny that I work at a tech company that it's like everything is going like AI, automation, and like it's like the service level aspect of that is really going away. And that, the company that I work for, we're bringing back that human to human level communication. And that's what I think is so important, is the fact that we get to sit down together, talk face to face. That's what I'm really passionate about, and just getting to know people.
For sure. Yeah, the world's changing, isn't it, Mike?
It sure is. It sure is.
Even like when you were, because we're roughly the same age, and it was like when we went to high school, like you didn't find your girlfriend on Tinder or Bumble or like back in college. Like, no, you actually had to go to the bars and like, I shouldn't say that. No, I was on Tinder a lot in college. I take that back. High school, I wasn't, because like that wasn't a thing, but like it happened so quickly, and now it's like, I almost would pose that if you met your girlfriend on like in real life, like at a coffee shop, most people would be a little bit like amazed, because like if I listen to a podcast or read something, the amount of people, particularly entrepreneurs, who meet their girlfriend on Facebook or a dating app blows me away.
Yeah.
And it makes me like feel good about myself, because like I don't know why I seem to be terrible with women, but like it's one of those things where I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll just have to like send someone a DM someday, and she'll be the one, because me as an individual, let's say in real life, it's not landing for whatever reason.
It's so interesting as well. It's funny because I met my girlfriend on Bumble, and we've been together now for almost 8 years, and our relationship is wonderful. But I think people are so afraid to really get to know a person in the very beginning. I think that's where online dating has really been so popular these days, because you get an inside look at who somebody is before you actually like commit to like going to see them. And I think it's like a lot of people these days are risk adverse. So it's like, like if you see an attractive woman out at the bar, it's like, oh, I'm not going to go talk to her. Like, what if I get shot down? And again, I think that really speaks to, the nature of like just the way humans are these days. It's like, I don't want to take a risk, because if it doesn't go my way, I'm never going to do this again.
Or what about our guy Trell at Lifetime? Like, hey, like Facebook, can I get some permission to do this podcast? And I talked to him about a year ago. I'm like, dude, just do it, man.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if it's gonna be any good. It probably won't at the start, but like if you do it for X amount of years, I almost guarantee it will.
100%. And if it's something you're passionate about, you'll always find ways to improve in that. And that's what's so funny. If people have been following this podcast, like I've done it in so many different ways, whether I've done it on video through like the Riverside app or the Spotify app, or like right now we're recording this on an iPad. I've recorded it on my phone. And again, it's just the effort of doing it. And if it's something that you're really passionate about, you'll always find a way to improve.
Yeah.
And we chatted about this as well, where it's like, what are my ultimate goals? It's like, I want to have a podcast studio where I can have a one place where I can house everything. I can have like the best mics, the best video. I can have this sign actually up on a wall instead of like randomly placing it in random environments. But again, it's like you have to work towards those things. Obviously it costs money to do that, but I think that's the motto of Elevant is like rise and go, but it's always improving and always finding a way to do those things. But again, at the end of the day, it's about the people, right? And if I can get people to commit, we're at my house right now. It's that's a really important thing to me, is like I'm still out there doing it no matter what people's reactions are, because I don't really give a shit what their reactions are, because again, it's like, what are you actually doing that is like anything like this? But I
agree.
I love doing this, and like one of my like passions is just really getting to know people, having them tell their story, and this is a platform that I get to do that. And I think that's why I fell in love with recruiting, all these years ago, because I get to help shape people's lives, and your work is a huge piece of what your day to day and your whole life is. And if I can put you in the right position in a place to be successful that can change your life, that is so rewarding to me. And I just hope that this podcast can do the same for other people. It's like, I want you to tell your story. I want you to tell people what makes you rise and go, because ultimately, if there's somebody out there struggling, or if there's someone out there that it's like, I want to do this, I want, like the Trell story. It's like, well, I'm out here doing it. Why can't you do it? You know what I mean?
Well, take that step deeper. So you're creating this podcast, right? And it's helping people. Like people are getting some sort of inspiration out of it.
I hope so.
Also, like you are putting that, you're documenting your life so that your kids, your grandkids, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, they have like, well, who was my great grandpa, or who was Mike Davis? And you have that piece. And that's not to say this podcast or even Elevant is going to be the most important thing you do in your life, like, because I believe it's going to be raising kids and like having a family, whatever. But there's power in that.
Yeah.
You know, like if you think about like historically, there's only books that were written about like Julius Caesar, guys from like many, many years ago. But now it's like we have this video element to it, podcasts. Like within your network of people, you're going to be remembered.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to put you on a pedestal, but you know what I mean.
Oh,
Like
you can. That's fine.
there's
That's all
something
right.
powerful about that where it's like, you know, again, like I don't. So I never really met my grandparents. They had unfortunately passed away, but I only know them through the lens of like my mom and my dad. I don't know them through the lens of somebody else or through, you know, a video, a book, anything like that. I think that would have been really cool. So again, what we're doing, even if it's on a small scale, it's going to have these ramifications, positive ramifications over the course of time that I get excited about.
You know, I've never actually thought of it that way, which is so interesting too, because it's, yeah, I think about like the transitions I made in my life where it was like baseball was like how everyone knew me. I was a
Mm-hmm.
good enough baseball player. I had a lot of success in that area, but again, I don't want to say like that wasn't enough, but again, it's like I can't play baseball forever. I love what I do recruiting, but it's like, I sometimes struggle like being bossed around by other people.
Right.
And it's like to be able to make something my own again, it's like you kind of hit me in my feels right there where I'm like, I sometimes I don't recognize that I'm doing something for other people, but it's like, this is going to have a lasting impact. This is something that'll like forever be recorded. And, people will hopefully look back and say like, I'm doing the right things. And, this has really changed my life into like where I was, many years ago. So, man, that was a really good point that you had right
Two
there.
people like 50 years from now are going to watch this. It's probably going to be like, I don't know, whomever. And they're like, wow, it's going to leave a lasting impression. Like, because we haven't seen it yet. Like, podcast content's relatively new, but fast forward 50, 100 years, the impact, I don't know. Again, it's just exciting.
But what's interesting too is like you look at like a lot of like social media content and it's like, you see like these hot chicks running around in bikinis, you see people doing all these stupid, it's almost like
Yeah.
Jackass like back in the day. But I really wanted to have a message that resonated with
Right.
people. I wanted something that was positive. I it's like, I love to work out, but you're not going to see me like shirtless, like trying to like flaunt everything. But when I'm working out, like I'm sending that message of like, hey, like I worked out this morning, and like I woke up this morning, I felt like shit. I didn't want to go, but at the same time, it's like sometimes you have to do things that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
And the gym is one thing, but it also like goes into other aspects of my life. Like it snowed pretty heavily here the
Mm-hmm.
other week, and we got this brand new snowblower. And I'm like, I had to snowblower our driveway before I went to work. I'm like, I don't want to do it, but it's like, that same mentality of like, I don't want to go to the gym, I don't want to do this, I'm going to do it anyways. And like
Mm-hmm.
when I got it done, it's like, okay, it's nice. You get in and out of our driveway super easily.
Right.
And again, I think that's setting the example for other people that again, not everything in life is going to be easy, but if you rise and go, you can overcome any challenge that's put in front of you. And I
Right.
think that's something that is really important. That I'm curious to learn a little bit more about some of the challenges that you've faced in your life.
A lot, probably much like you know. And fortunately, they're mostly they were self-inflicted. It was me just being a dumbass, you know, making bad decisions,
Yeah.
and then having to deal with those consequences. Like, because there are people in the world who are just born into terrible circumstances and they literally never get out of them. Or if they're born into terrible circumstances, they don't know how to get out because they don't have even a remote support system. I'm grateful in that sense. But yeah, like anyone, I've made some bad decisions, particularly with women. I've never really had issues with like drugs or alcohol, but we all have our vices.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's so interesting. Is like when I was struggling with substance abuse and drinking and all those terrible things that you shouldn't be doing, it took a long time for me to get out of that. I mean, I would recognize it maybe for like a couple weeks, maybe a couple months, but I kind of fall back into that same circle. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that people struggle with is like you have to make these lifetime changes, right? And like especially for me, it's like, all right, like I really have to cut out drinking. I have to cut out, drugs completely out of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard too, because you're going to be cutting people out of your life as
Yeah.
well. And I think that's a big struggle is like, I've learned to be a little bit more comfortable being like by myself, especially on weekends. Now I have my girlfriend, we have this beautiful house here. And, but a lot of time, like I'm so like, I'm very people focused. I love being around people. So like sometimes I really struggle with, I wouldn't call it depression, but almost like some like a piece of loneliness because like I'm so close with like all of like my high school friends, But there was a point in time where I probably went 6 months without seeing any of them,
Mm-hmm.
and like they get pissed at me because like you don't talk to us anymore, you don't hang out. But I'm like I'm trying to develop this new, I don't want to say personality, but I'm trying to develop this new way of life that
Mm-hmm.
one is healthy for me because like I want to live forever. That's the thing, and like I feel like the gym has become, one of my biggest priorities because it really helps my mental health. It helps keep me in the right space. And, I spend a lot of time in the gym. So I think that's been really helpful for like not being lonely. And then you create a larger network from Lifetime, which I think is one of the most beneficial things about being a member there is,
Sure.
I meet people like you, I meet people like Trell, I meet people like Sean Lewis, the list goes on and on.
Right.
And again, it's like they're very like-minded, and so it makes the making the right decisions a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
So let's chat a little bit more. I all of
about
our listeners,
chicks.
yeah. Well, I don't know if my girlfriend would love that, but no, I'm curious about again with your passions and what makes you rise and go. I know I when I sent you the script for this podcast, I really wanted you to think deep into what are your motivating factors and how maybe someone that's listening to this podcast can relate to those.
Like, what else am I gonna do?
Yeah.
It's like it's not really about the money anymore. Not that I'm wealthy, but like once you get somewhat established, you're like money seems to lose a little bit of value. So I kind of have to ask myself, like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I hopping on planes or like going wherever for these interviews? And it's like, what else am I gonna do? And I think it was Kobe Bryant who said that at one point. Like, what else am I gonna do if I'm not working on my game or whatever he was doing, post retirement? That's where I find myself. Like, I would be devoid of purpose, Mike, if I wasn't writing and interviewing people. And my life would probably consist of, I don't know, watching a lot of Netflix,
Yeah.
Lunchables, just completely destroying my body and my mind. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So like this keeps me on track. I'm just growing. I'm evolving. And that's fun. It's fun to see like, well, who could Quentin Super become? Because again, I'm just a guy from Osseo. I don't think I'm special or unique. Maybe my gift is that I'm hungry for something. Maybe it's like I didn't get enough love from my parents or like enough validation in high school. So it's like I'm chasing something and I don't know what that is yet. But I've done a lot of like internal introspection. I think, yeah, like I want to prove something to someone. Ironically, I don't think anyone's asking me to do that. So it's like I have to find that love internally. Like, hey, you're just do what you want to do, but do it for the joy of it, not because you're trying to prove someone wrong or right.
Sure. So, like, as your journalism and everything that you're doing evolves, like, what are like the next steps in your journey?
On a practical level, more video content. Like I like going to people's, let's say, warehouses or storefronts or whatever, and videoing them, like getting them on camera. But I'm very reticent to do that because it's like, well, I love reading and writing. I think like people will grow exponentially if they do that, as opposed to just listening to a podcast while they walk on the treadmill or whatever.
Sure.
Like, I won't go down that rabbit hole. Like, I just don't think they're learning when they do that. But I've realized, like, okay, like I want to make more money. It's like writing's great, but it's a limited demographic. Like, I think it's 5% of the American population will read a book this year. I'm assuming 100% will watch a video or TV or something like that. So again, I can either continue to sort of bang my head against the wall and be like, no, like I'm going to capture all 5% of Americans who want to read. All right, good luck. Or you can kind of go into that ocean of like, yeah, 100% of people are willing to click on a video. And
Sure.
so I'm still experimenting. I haven't found my groove yet in many ways, Mike, but I'm liking the progress.
Yeah, I've noticed more videos that you've covered. I think you posted one either yesterday or today about he was a fitness trainer, big guy. Well, I can't remember what his name was.
His name is Doug Staley.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about that story because I believe he owns his own gym. He's into fitness. Tell that story to our listeners.
Sure, he's an interesting guy. I met him about a year ago at a BNI event, just like a networking thing.
What is BNI?
It's I don't even know what it stands for. It's an acronym for like Business Networking International or something. But it's just a bunch of people. They pay like $1,000 or whatever a year to be a part of a networking group. And the theory is like they pass business amongst each other. So they're only gonna have one real estate agent, one roofing company, one plumber, etc. And they're just gonna trade business. And there's a bunch of politics associated with it that I won't get into. But that's where I met Doug. And he was just a very nice guy when I initially met him. But, I didn't really think anything more of it. But I'm always looking for people for content. And I know he has his own gym. And I know he has a unique story. He's basically just an individual personal trainer who has his own commercial space. Never been there. But, like, I used to live in St. Paul. And I was like, I'm going to contact Doug. Graciously, he accepted. We walked in there. And it was cool. Like, he's a guy, grew up in North Dakota. Small town, but really good values. Like a lot of people who come from more rural areas. And now he's in the city. And He's just trying to help people get better with their health and their fitness. And I don't know if you saw it on the video, but his gym is really cool. It's like a 2-layer
Yeah.
thing. But he's not, he's just in his niche. He's not trying to compete with Lifetime or any of these big conglomerates. He's just him. I always like to highlight those people because if I went and interviewed, let's say, the VP of Lifetime, like he doesn't need any more
Right.
credibility. Like I'm not validating him in any way, but I don't know if anyone's going to tell Doug's story, and I don't know if they're going to do it justice. So when I go in there, it's like two-part. I want to write the story really well, and then now with the camera, the video element, it's like let's make him look good.
Yeah.
And Davis, he does a great job at that. It's
Yeah.
certainly not me. I'm just standing there asking questions. Anything visually that people like, all the credit to Davis.
Yeah, it's so interesting. We had a conversation about Davis, and like the work that he does is truly incredible. If you guys check out our website, www.theelevantbrand.com, a lot of the pictures are from Davis, and it's so cool with people that are like professionals in that area. Because I think about this all the time. Is like as an entrepreneur, like I can kind of do everything, but I'm not like a professional by any means, and that's where, again, as Elevant continues to grow, like I want to bring people into the brand that, recognize our values and can, again, that are relatively easy to work with. But, again, I just remember when, because Davis, we did a photo shoot over by, I'm having a brain fart right now. Or the Sculpture Gardens, that's what it's called. And, he took some pictures in like different areas. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, why is he taking one by like the spoon? And I remember when he sent me over all the pictures, I was truly blown away because it was like every single picture that he took and that he sent on there. I was like, these are absolutely incredible. And and again, I think it's like working with those types of people that are, whether they're growing or they're well established. Again, it's like, I don't want to go to some like big picture company, pay, $10,000. The pictures will look great, but I'd rather like help somebody that's working locally, that's trying to build their own thing. And again, I think that really goes to, really just working with great people. And I think that's what you recognize is, whenever you're working with people, you're trying to tell their story, right? And, I'm very curious about this, but like, how do you determine like the folks that you like want to work with, write stories about, or et cetera?
It's a great question. A lot of times it's just a vibe. Like I reached out to you, like we didn't speak like extensively prior to sitting down, but it's like I see what you post online, I see what you're trying to do. I want to amplify that. Now, I'd like to work with more established companies, typically like if they're in the trades, let's say, or an insurance agent. I don't want to work with an insurance agent who's been doing it for 6 months because they might not be in the business,
right?
In a year, whatever it is. But it's telling the story on a local level because, even if you think of like the major news companies here, it's always just controversy driven. It's like, hey, I want to get clicks. I want to tell the word. Like it's divisive. And I hate that. Like I get it. I also am maybe ignorant. I'm like, no, I think positivity wins. And so it's like when I come and I speak to you, for example, there's no angle. There's nothing I'm trying to spin. It's just like, let me tell the story. And like, yeah, maybe I'm kind of like juicing you up a little bit.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
But it's certainly not like, well, hey, how can I like sneak in the back door and make this guy look bad? Like, A, that would damage my reputation.
Right.
And B, it's like, dude, just for clicks, just for a little bit of money and clout, like to me, it's a long game. Like the more relationships you can build, I mean, think about where we'll be in 5, 10 years, 20 years.
Yeah.
Like forget the financial element, although I'm sure that'll come. It's like just the connections, the sense of community. That's what I think too many people don't think about is they're just very narrow, very focused on like, what can I get today?
Right.
It's like, that's not a way to think. Now, there's reasons people think that, right? If they don't have money or resources or if they don't have the knowledge to be like to see beyond what's right in front of them. But I just think, yeah, it's about the long game. Not that we live here forever, but the things you can build, like you're building Elevant.
Right.
You're not just clicking a button and being like, boom, I am a established company. Nothing good would come out of that. Like Charles' podcast, for example, or whatever. It's not a podcast, but like he wants the validation, right? Like who's going to tell me? Who's going to give me that encouragement? Like, no, just go do it.
Yeah.
Do it for yourself. If you're lucky, people will find value in it and then they'll validate you. But it has to be about something bigger. And that's what I think all successful companies do is it's about something beyond just, let's say, selling shoes like with Shoe Dog and Phil Knight. It's something more. That's what Elevant's trying to do. That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. And, that's some of the struggles that I've had because I've had, some business partners where, I invited them into the brand, they didn't have to pay anything. I gave them a piece of ownership. And, for me, I think we chatted about this as well. It's like, I respect people that, have a sense of urgency, that are, willing to put a lot of thought into what Elevant is going to be. If you're going to be a part of this, you have to think about it like as an owner of Elevant, right?
Right.
And I think that's one of the challenges that I have is, trying to build this on my own. It's like whenever I run into frustrations, like I can't blame anyone but myself, But then, I bring other people in and I try to hand off some work and then they don't work with the same sense of urgency with me. And I just get so frustrated.
Yeah.
And again, like you said, it's like playing the long game. It's like every entrepreneur knows you're gonna have headaches. You're gonna have to work through. You're gonna have to be bootstrapped. You're gonna have to be creative in how you problem solve. But at the same time, I think that's something that's really important. Is if you're gonna bring people into your business or whatever that is, it's like you have to set expectations, right? And I think that's an area where it's like, oh, people see I'm grinding, I'm trying to do all these things. It's like, oh, you should be the same way. And I think that's where it's like, my level of communication is, something that's a work in progress as I grow as a leader. But at the same time, I'm like, I've put together the podcast, I've put together our website. I'm working with all these other institutions that are, helping me take some work off my plate. But at the same time, it's like, if you're going to join Elevant, it's like, you got to rise and go right there with me. You know what I mean?
And
it's
going to be hard to find.
It is hard to find, but at the, everyone's busy, right? Yeah. And I think, another friend of mine that's joining the business, he's transitioning from his 9 to 5. I think he put in like his 4-week notice, and I'm like, oh, that's exciting because it's like you're leaving your 9 to 5. You're going to build something. Use Elevant as a vehicle for that, and I guess I'm getting a little impatient because it's like I want him to start going now, but at the same time, it's like no matter whoever's involved with Elevant, no matter how it's going, it's like I have this like never say die attitude. It's like just because I'm frustrated, just because I get anxious about things, just because things are hard doesn't mean that it's going to be the end of the world. Because it's like I have days where I am literally on cloud 9, and then there's days where I'm just sitting there shitter like, what the hell am I doing with my life? But again, I think that's something that everyone goes through, and it's like, you're complaining about all the food on your plate when your goal is just to eat, and that's something that always resonates with me because it's like, again, it's like 5 years ago I was just basically a drunk, doing nothing, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And now I'm here, and so again, I think it's you really have to recognize and you have to give yourself grace a lot of times as well.
I didn't mean to laugh at that. It was just like,
no, it's fine.
It was funny because 5 years ago I was pretty much in a similar place, probably just in a different part of the world. But I would encourage you to build those relationships to the best of your ability, like the team, the systems. Like I'm nothing without Davis making me look good. Like the articles I write, they're aided by the thumbnails that come with them, and that's my graphic designer who I've had for the last 4 years. And it's like those guys are like they're gold to me. I don't want to do anything to mess that up. It's like I pay a lot more than I could, like meaning I could go on Fiverr and get a thumbnail for like $3 from some dude in Pakistan. But it's like, nah, man, like I'm gonna pay max 50 because he's great at what he does, and I value him and I value our relationship. Maybe one day I can employ him on a full-time basis. Yeah. Same thing with Davis, and I've actually talked to him about that. He doesn't want to be employed. He's he's an LLC type of guy. Cool. But point being is like everything's relationships. Like when I bought my house earlier this year, systems in place, like Caleb, who's been on my platform several times, like my loan originator, my insurance agent. Like it was just easy, and you could apply that to anything. It's like it's all about the people So for you, if you can find those people who like the brand, like what you're doing, like savor them. Just if they're good. If they're not, I would encourage you to move on because they're just it's hard to drag people to where you're going.
And I think that's something that I struggle with is because like I always think the best of people, and it's like I'm trying to pull them along with me. And like I recognize like as owner of this brand, like I have to have the ultimate drive, and like no one's ever going to match my intensity with how I'm trying to grow Elevant. But, again, it's like I want them to think about, what is the brand represented? If I'm a part of that, like it's rise and go. That's every single day. You got to do something, right? And, that's where even like as long as like I just post something on Instagram or a social media site. But, it's like these big things like doing the podcast, scheduling. And, sometimes I've run into like some complications where like the other day I was supposed to have a podcast. And I should have gotten her like phone number so we could communicate a little bit better. So we were set up for 3:00. I'm like, I got done with work early. I came home. I had to like set up the room upstairs. I sit down. I'm like, all right, 3:00, get logged in. She doesn't log in. I looked at the thing and she sent it at 9:30. Like, hey, I can't make it today. And it just like it just like killed me inside a little bit because I was just so ready to do this thing, and I just when things don't go my way, I sometimes get down in the dumps, right?
Yeah.
But again, it's like, all right, well, I got Quentin doing the article this
Yeah.
week. We're gonna do the podcast. I got another podcast on Monday, so it's like being able to bounce back from challenges. I think is something that's really important, and
Yeah.
it kind of goes back to what you said earlier too, where some people they don't have that capability to bounce back, or they don't have the resources to do that. And those are the people that I'm really trying to help as well,
Mhm.
because I know at one point in my life I was at that aspect. You know what I mean?
For sure. We'll get used to that disappointment because
Yeah.
I still get it. Like 5 years doing these interviews, it's like even the other day, it's like 90 minutes before. And the granted there was a snowstorm, so I give her a little bit of a break. But it's like she's like, let's just reschedule. And I'm like, I canceled my pickleball, at Lifetime to do this, and you just have to bounce back, And it's like even when you're trying to give someone to something, like I'll have a couple articles every year that are just in the hopper.
Yeah.
Like I'm waiting on approval from the client. Like, hey, like, can I publish this? And they don't get back to me. They ghost me or whatever. And I'm like, I just kind of want to like strangle them. I'm like, look, I'm trying to help you.
Right.
I can't do anything about it. And I've had to learn over the last couple of years, like, just let it go. It's going to be what it's going to be.
Right.
And outside of like 4 or 5 instances, eventually they come back around. Like, okay, hit that publish button. And like, yeah, it kills me up until that point. But I've just gotten better about accepting it. So unfortunately, I don't care how big you are. I think people are always going to get ghosted, canceled on, things like that.
And I think that's an interesting thing because this is what we chatted about too. Is like we're very like-minded. Like when we do things, we commit to them.
We're there.
We do it urgent. Like this came together all within like a week. And that's something where like when you work with people like that, you really truly like appreciate it. Like you said, it's like they're worth their weight in gold because they're on like that same mindset where it's like, hey, let's do this, let's get it done. And again, it's like I can trust to come back to you that hey, we can jump on this podcast again, and I can trust that hey, if we schedule something, you'll actually be here on time. Which is, I think that's like one of my I don't know if I call it a skill or like a quirk of mine is like. If you say like when we were meeting at Lifetime, I think we had scheduled for 4. I was there at 3:30 because I want to make sure that I'm there and I'm prepared. And like whenever we sit down, like boom, you have my attention for that entire time.
Right.
And there's so many people. Like I just think like being late is like the most disrespectful thing in the entire world.
Isn't it sad that people like that's how they move through the world?
Yeah.
Like 4:00. How about 4:30? And they don't tell you, and you're like, dude.
Right. Well, especially like when you have a job, you're doing the side hustle. It's like you have limited time to like do some things, and it's like when I commit my time to you, like that is your time, and it's like you're not respecting me at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But again, it's like you said, it's like you want to put your faith in people, but you can't get down when people disappoint you because it's like you almost have to expect it. Sometimes.
For sure.
But no, I mean, what else you got here? I can't even see what time we're at 42 minutes right now.
How long do your podcasts usually go?
If we can get to 30 minutes, I think that is a godsend. I think maybe the longest one I've done was like an hour and change.
Yeah.
But
how about this? What do you want to know about me? And if you say, dude, I'm good.
What do I want to know about you? So you're in the roofing business. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. I'm a sales consultant for Gruesing Roofing. Like, Guy Gruesing.
Yeah.
Again, power relationships. Great guy. Love working for him. I really don't like shingles. I don't like siding. Like it's just not interesting to me. I like helping people get what they want because people at a certain point in time need roofing, siding, things of that nature. And so that's the fun of the job. Been doing it for 4 years. Fortunate to make a nice living, get a lot of time off, get to go travel and things of that nature. But it's not my dream, But I don't say that with any sort of animosity because, again, I'm wholly appreciative to like Guy Gruesing, his company, everything that he's built. But we all got our own ambitions, right? And so that's why, much like you, it's like from sun up to sundown, like I'm grinding. I'm trying to make things happen.
So, like, tell us a little bit more about the roofing, because when I think about roofing, I'm like, are you that guy that just, like, drives around in a hailstorm? I'm like, hey, man, like, your roof, like, come on. So how does that work? How do you go about, getting your business and being successful there?
There are companies who operate that way, and to your point, most people hate those guys because they just knock on your door and they say, hey, like, your roof is damaged or some bullshit. They just want you to sign a piece of paper, file a claim with your insurance company, whatever. I work for Gruesing Roofing. We're more retail oriented. So it's like when your roof is old and maybe you have a leak in your bathroom, that's when you call me. I'm assisting you getting from problem to solution. And I like that more. Like we'll do some work with hail claims for sure if people call us, but I don't want to be that guy like knocking doors all
Yeah.
day. Like that just sounds
It
terrible.
sounds so old school, you know what I
Well,
mean?
some people really like it, and I respect the hell out of those guys because I would hate like I don't like showing up where I'm not invited or where I'm
Sure.
not wanted. It's just like a problem that I have. Like maybe I have to get over it, but it's like I hate just inserting myself into situations. Like let's say you're at a networking event or a party. It's like there's nothing worse to me than like budging into a
Sure.
conversation, being like, "So what's going on here?" You're like, well, I was actually talking to someone until you
Right.
walked up on us. But again, I work for a great company, and I just try to be an extension of that, an embodiment of the values and the principles they have, and it's been fun. I've learned a lot. I've grown. I've developed. It's undoubtedly assisted in what I'm doing with the interviewing. So
Sure. So like you're on the sales side.
I'm on the sales side.
So like how do you get leads and like how do you get the business in the door? You say you work in the retail space. So how does that work?
I do market a lot on my Facebook page as well. Otherwise, the company, like they've been in business for 53 years, so people are calling in all the time. And then I spend all day going to different people's houses by invitation. And again, just problem solving. Like, where are you at? Can I help you get to your desired solution? Ironically, this is where I've learned a lot about disappointment. Like, they say if you get 1 out of 3 jobs, you're doing a good job. And
Sure.
so that means like 2 out of 3 people are saying, nah, Quentin, or no, Gruesing Roofing, we don't want you. And I've just learned to not take it personally. Ironically, when I get into like what I do, I take it more personally when someone, is a half hour late or
Right.
like ghosts me or whatever. And I don't know why that doesn't happen. Like I should just be like, nope, it's part of life. But maybe I'm just a little fragile ego wise,
Yeah.
emotionally.
Well, especially like I think about this all the time too, because like in recruiting, like I generate my own leads through
Yeah.
like LinkedIn or through my network, and if I like someone is like open to going through an interview process, I'm like this is the perfect candidate, this is great, you did well in an interview, and then we make them an offer, like nah, I'm like I just spent like 4 weeks with you teaching you everything that you need to know about this interview process. This is the perfect job for you. And then when they turn us down, I'm just like, again, it
Yeah.
hurts because I get bonuses
I was
whenever we
gonna say
hire
that's how you're
people.
compensated too, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And so, again, I think there is a lot of power in no, especially when
Yeah.
you're the one that gets to say no. But when you hear that, it can damage the ego a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like you said, and especially like when you're in a sales oriented role. I mean, again, that has a huge piece of your compensation. And it's like you give people your time, you listen to what their needs are, and you can help them and solve their needs. But then it's like, we'd rather go a cheaper route, or
Yeah.
there's another company that my cousin works for that I'll go that way. And I think that's something like I'm looking into a career in sales as well. I think that's something that I would enjoy. And I'm used to hearing no, so
Same.
it doesn't hurt as much anymore.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's so interesting when again you deal with people on a day in and day out basis, and there's so many personalities out
Yeah.
there that again it's like if you have the goal in mind to help people, I think you can never go wrong.
Yeah, that's kind of where it starts, and you just learn so much. I've been to houses where like they just let you in, and then you awkwardly stand in their doorway because they clearly don't want you there, and you're like, well, why did you invite me out here?
Yeah.
Sort of. That's why I think I would just hate like the door knocking route, where it's like the cringe, of
Sure.
like someone being like, go away or slamming the door in your face or whatever. But you have to go through those. I certainly don't shy away from rejection or no's. Like they're just a necessary part of things. I just don't think maybe I'll never get over like the initial sting. It's just the recovery time just keeps becoming less
Yeah.
and less, Whereas like, let's say you're 16 and you ask a girl out on a date, she says no, well that might hurt for like 2 months.
Yeah.
And then now you're just like, 2 hours later, it's like, okay, this is just part of life.
Yeah, whatever. She was online anyway. It doesn't even matter.
But like, it's just less. Does that make
Sure.
sense? Like, would you agree with that?
100%. 100%. And I think that's the key is like how quickly you can get over things that don't go your way. I think that really determines kind of like not necessarily where your ego is, but like where you are like maturity wise. I think the older you get, the more you hopefully get used to rejection, hearing the word no, and not letting that ruin your day or ruin your week. Again, I will never speak for everybody, but for me, it's like I hear the word no, I'm like, all right, just on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Here we go.
It just is what it is. You got to fill your mind with something else to get over it.
Yeah, for real.
Stay busy.
That's why the gym's so important for me. If I have a tough day, like that's the best time for me to go in the gym because then I'm just like freaking out in there, like trying to lift as much weight as possible. But again, it's like I leave the gym and it's like, all right, I'm back to being settled.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's been a huge aspect of like my own like mental health is like whenever things are going tough for me, I always know if I go into the gym, it's like it's gonna be a good day.
Yeah.
So let me ask Quentin, what's next for you? What's in the hopper for you here as we move forward?
Good question. I wish I had some like great answer, like more. I mean, I'm gonna go on vacation here shortly. That'll be fun. Me
Where
and
are you
my
headed?
brother to Italy.
Okay,
So that'll be kind of cool. Like we're both Italian, and so it's like go back to the fatherland in this
sure,
case, eat some pasta, hit on some Italian chicks. Well, he can't. He's married, but you get the idea.
yeah,
But on a professional level, like, yeah, man, just continue to grind, just work. I love it, And to my earlier point, what else am I gonna do?
yeah.
So I'm excited to see what happens this year, both on like a sponsorship level. Who am I able to connect with? Who am I able to write about? And then internally, like I'll get better as a writer. I've been doing this for like 8 years now as like a professional writer. Still a long way to go, and that's exciting. Like I don't have a destination in mind, man. It's just like get better, help people, live with the results. That formula has worked to this point, so I'll just continue to do it.
Well, I know people resonate with that, and I love what you're doing. So thank you for being on the podcast
For
here today.
sure.
All right, before we go, give everyone your social media one more time.
It's Quentin Super on Facebook and LinkedIn, and then Quentin the Super on Instagram.
All right, brother.
So
Thanks for joining us, and rise and go. Oh,
absolutely
that's great. See, now we can get this on everything.
sweet.
Perfect.